So let us take a journey to the edge, where we are offered to reimagine what is purpose and meaning in our lives, and offered a chance to awaken to the meaning that is all. So where does this begin? Purpose. We can all come up with a fairly similar definition for what this word means without opening up a dictionary. A drive, a fire, the incentive to accomplish something. But what does this word mean in the small moments of our lives? How does this word shape us in our interactions when we go to sleep at night, when we journal? And I think where this first begins, and we first begin to recognize this, is in doubt. And while this may seem contrary to the idea of purpose, that journey of purpose and meaning that we seek in our lives, I think it means we're on to something. Because I think when we doubt and when we question, we are opened up to an expansion of ourselves in which we can move into something greater. A writer, Barry Lopez, writes, "Confronted by an unknown landscape, what happens to our sense of wealth? What does it mean to grow rich? Is it to have red-blooded adventures or have a good family life?" And I would ask, what happens to our sense of place in the world? How do the relationships in an unknown landscape change, enhance? And I think the best representation of doubting, of questioning, is in getting lost. Because when we get lost, we lose the tools that traditionally ground our world. We lose our habit, our routine, our tradition, and we move into a place that we cannot rely on in the same ways. We are physically lost. And in this way, we can be opened up to something greater. This process has actualized through my experience with Professionals Without Borders. We are a Seattle University-based organization that works to collaborate and engage students, faculty, staff, in order to create sustainable service projects. So what does this look like? It could be maintenance in one of our local L'Arche communities on Capitol Hill. It could be a financial catalyst for a water pipeline in rural Nicaragua, or it could be the addition of a building for a cultural center in Chikuni, Zambia. But regardless of what this initial incentive or purpose is, I have found myself diving into communities in certain pockets of the world that I am, in essence, lost. I can't rely on my native tongue, my habits, that local coffee shop where I feel comfortable in the corner. I have found in these moments where what I find is normal, the people that I'm surrounded by may not think so. Or what I think is valuable may be a joke to somebody else. And thus, my questioning, my awareness goes inward. And I start questioning my status quo, my faith, my awareness, my privilege, my relationship within a new community, a global community. Because it is easy to get lost in the unfamiliar rumblings of another culture and country, naive in so many technicalities, history, customs. But I find that there is immense beauty and growth through this process, because when surrounded by unfamiliarity, we have the opportunity to open our eyes to other things around us. We have the opportunity to be startled into a new idea, perspective, understanding. So how does this manifest? Well, when you enter into an unknown space, physical space, mental space, landscape of the heart, you have to loosen the control of your reality. Start opening up some of those doors that Dale talked about. And in so doing, you are brought into the immediacy of now and the people and the environment that you are surrounded by. And in this way, we have the capacity to see more than a single story. A novelist, Chimamanda Adichie, discusses the danger of single stories. How, with limited perspective, exposure, vision, you cannot fully know another person's life. You hear a story associated with that life, and based on those assumptions, you expand it to represent that one person's story, what makes it valuable, what makes it dignified, what makes it worthy to you. Now, the problem with single stories is that we don't just stop at constructing a story or a picture of one person's life for that one person. We expand it to all the people associated with that life. For example, you hear a story about poverty in a particular region in Africa. And based on hearing that story, you make an assumption of what all the people in that small region are experiencing. Or, based on that assumption, you make up a story of what all the people in that region or that country are experiencing, what their story is, what makes their life valuable. Or we expand that story to represent the entire continent of Africa. You see how we can miss so much in this process. But this happens every day, and this happens everywhere. You hear a story about a practice in Christianity or Islam, and based on the assumptions you have with that story, you extrapolate it to all the people associated with that faith. Thus, it is by traveling into unknown territories of the physical landscape, of the mental landscape, of the landscape of the heart, in which we have an opportunity to push beyond those boundaries, those doors, those walls, those single stories we establish. And in so doing, remove the veil with which we traditionally see the world through and see beyond those limiting perspectives. And so this is where I find a reorientation process beginning. As I'm entering into a community as part of a community prepared project, I am meeting another community that is coming as mentors and guides, and we collide in this blend of experience. And if we loosen the control of which we see the world, of which we want to see the world, we have the opportunity to gain meaning in another way, in a deeper way, in a way that's not necessarily putting in a new water pipeline, but in one that runs deeper within us, at a lower resonance, at a deeper resonance. And in these unknown places, when we seek comfort, when we seek community, we find meaning in that other that we're engaging with. We find meaning in being together. We find meaning in our common humanity, our common brokenness, our common holiness of dancing, of laughing, of working together, or sitting in silence. Thomas Nagel, a contemporary philosopher, writes, with his newfound self-consciousness, he would have to return to his meager yet frantic life, full of doubts that he was unable to answer, but also full of purposes that he was unable to abandon. Nagel is noting this paradox of our lives. We go somewhere, we expand ourselves, we see something out of our normal vision, but eventually we come back again and we seek comfort and we seek routine, which isn't necessarily bad, but we question everything that happened. How can all of these experiences and perspectives that I've had live in this one life? How do we work through that? But the hope is that we found a reciprocal relationship that can fuel us, that can give us meaning, to continue to answer and question that movement of ourselves forward, our evolution as individuals and as a greater world. So, my challenge for you today is to meet the other. And traveling may be a very obvious way to do so, but we all have our own comfort zones, our own unknown, and that could be in our everyday life right here. The other could be somebody you walk by every day with your eyes down. The other could be that person selling the newspaper outside of your local coffee shop. The other could be the person sitting 2 seats down from you at the workplace, at school, right now. Or it could be that person sitting in the cold doorway on the streets. But the world begs for us to engage, begs for us to ask questions, begs for us to tell stories and to dance together. Asking Barry Lopez's question again, what does it mean to grow rich? Is it to retain a capacity for awe and astonishment in our lives? Is it to continue to hunger after what is genuine and worthy? Is it to live at moral peace with the universe? He continues, it is impossible to know clearly the answer to this question. But by coming to know a place where the common elements of life are understood differently, we have the advantage of an altered perspective. And with that shift, it is possible to imagine afresh a way to a lasting security of the soul and heart, and toward an accommodation in time we call history, ours and the world's. So I'd like to remind you before we leave that this is no recipe, this is no guideline, there is no timeline. This is your life, your journey, and your unknown. But let this be a call to the wild recesses of your heart that beg to expand beyond the doors, the single stories, the social locations that we stand, that beg to break beyond those and dance in the spaces between us. It is our hope that we can, as we continue forward on this process, the questions that we ask will go deeper and deeper. And the experiences that we are propelled into will lead us to a more lasting security of the soul and heart. Thank you.